You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
I actually got interviewed by a reporter because of the South Park episode in which they raped and murdered a cartoon version of Donald Trump. And the question there was that over the line? So, I mean, in one sense, it's a great time to do comedy because there is no line anymore.
Hey everyone, thanks again for hitting that play button. It's another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Well, we're still here, and that religious group predicted that we all be dead right now. So speaking of the earth ending, today on the show, we have Steve Kaplan. Steve founded the HBO Writers Workshop and is one of the most sought-after experts on comedy. Just as a reminder, on Wednesday, November the 4th of this year at 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific Time, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Steve is hosting a webinar, How Do You Put the Comedy in Dramedy? I will link to that in the show notes. Again, that's a webinar that you could access anytime, so you don't have to be available when that webinar happens. Also, if you find yourself in the LA area, Steve is hosting an in-person comedy intensive on January 30th and the 31st of next year, and you can go to kaplancomedy.com to check out for more info. Steve is a great guy, as you're about to hear. So on today's show, Steve and I talk the latest comedies out this year. We talk writing comedies, and I introduce Steve to the masterpiece that is The Room.
I cannot tell you. It's confidential.
Oh, come on. Why not?
No, I can't. Anyway, how is your sex life? I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Just a chicken. Chip, 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 chip. You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining me for another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Joining me today is Steve Kaplan. Steve is a returning guest. He first appeared on the podcast a little over a year ago. Steve was awesome, and I finally got to have him back. And for those of you who don't know, Steve is one of the industry's most sought-after experts on comedy. He has taught at UCLA, NYU, Yale, and several other universities across America. Steve also created the HBO Workspace, the HBO New Writers Program, and was the co-founder and artistic director of the Manhattan Punchline Theater. In 2013, Steve published the book, The Hidden Tools of Comedy. And also, Steve has an upcoming webinar called How Do You Put the Comedy in Dramedy, which will be Wednesday, November the 4th via the Writers Store. Steve Kaplan, how are you, sir?
Wow, I'm exhausted just listening to that. I'm good. I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you. I'm a little exhausted after reading that, but
Well, I think we should call it a night then. Thanks, everybody.
It's been a great show. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay. Listen to our podcast next week.
We'll do a sentence every week until we finally
Exactly. That way you won't burn yourself out.
See, this is why you're the man, the myth, the legend, Steve. I need you around because you have these great ideas. See, I don't think of that stuff.
Well, you see, all you needed to do is call.
There we go. That's what I'm going to start doing more often. I'm going to start calling you every day and being like, Steve, what do I do?
One word. We're going to do a new thing in podcasts. One word, and people, you know how popular Serial was, the offshoot of This American Life, but they had to do an entire hour to keep people captivated. You're going to do just one word, and everybody has to tune in the next week. What's the next word?
It's almost like the decoder ring from Little Orphan Annie.
Exactly. Upon. And you can have contests. What will be the next word? But anyway, So what's on your mind?
When you said cereal at first, I thought you meant the actual cornflakes type cereal, and it was like,
no, it's the new big thing where they investigate a murder and don't find out anything more than they knew before they started investigating it.
Yeah, it took me a second. Then I was like, oh, he's talking about cereal, Serial.
Exactly. And now they're going to put it on television. They're going to do a TV show based on Serial, all because those guys got Robert Durst to confess to murder on television. Now everybody wants to do it.
I'm actually, speaking of Serial. Before we get to, I know we were going to start talking about your stuff. I'm sorry. Now we're talking about cereal, but I actually had a great idea. Well, not so much great idea, but I thought of an idea about putting together something like cereal, because I said to myself, you know what? I tried to get into cereal and I couldn't. And I said, you know what? If radio plays or, because that's what it is, are going to be back, you could do a radio play and hell, I could sit around in my underwear like I am right now doing this podcast and nobody be any the wiser.
That's true, but that's also now an image that I'll never get out of my mind.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Steve.
No, that's okay.
So, Steve, it was about a year since you've been on the podcast. You were one of my first earliest guests, and I want to say thank you. Oh, really? Yes, you were one of my first earliest guests. I read The Hidden Tools of Comedy, and I was like, wow, I got to talk to this guy. And you said yes to come on, and it's a decision I know you've regretted ever since.
I've somehow risen above it, though.
You try to put it all behind you, like I don't know
exactly
who the this guy is. So, I just wanted to ask, Steve, what have you been up to for the past year? Have you been teaching seminars or have you been, pitching projects? I'm sure other people are interested too, because this is a follow up to your first appearance about a year ago. So, what have you been up to for the past year?
Well, we have been doing seminars. We went to Toronto, we went to London, we went to Seattle. We do Los Angeles a couple of times a year. We went to DC. So we've been doing conferences, seminars, doing a lot of consultations. I work with a lot of writers from around the world, and thank God for Skype. I don't know how people. I guess I know how people did it before Skype. They just ran up huge phone bills. And I'm working on another book. As well as the webinar that's coming up in November, which is. How do you put comedy in dramedy? And what we're going to do there is we're going to break down a film like Up in the Air and an episodic, our episodic like Fargo, and just kind of break down the elements of how the comedies intertwined along with the drama and how that works and the elements of that and what to look out for and what to look for. But along with that, I'm also working on a new book to go along with The Hidden Tools of Comedy, which, to the surprise of my publishers and everybody else, is a bestseller and keeps on selling. But the new book is going to be called, in a complete ripoff of Chris Vogler, we're going to call it the Comic Hero's Journey, which is a ripoff of Vogler's the Writer's Journey, which is a ripoff of the monomyth, the hero with 1,000 faces. So we've all ripped everybody else off, and what we're going to do there is we're going to break down story structure and script structure from a comics point of view. So that's what I've been doing, and on an almost weekly basis, I get a email from my publisher saying, "How's it coming?" and I, because I'm the world's slowest writer, and my reply is always, "It's coming." I don't say when it's coming, but I do promise them in the future it will be there. But that's what I'm doing. And we're doing another seminar in Los Angeles in January 30th and 31st. sandwiched right between the NFL championship game and the Super Bowl. So, if you're going to watch the Super Bowl, just the week before, we'll be there.
Yeah, there's that 1 week break. I was going to say I was waiting for you to finish that thought because I was like, I hope he's not going to have the same day as the NFC Championship game, or that would be pretty.
We avoid it both by a week.
Okay, excellent. So that's that week that they have the Pro Bowl at now, because nobody watches that, Steve. So
damn, I'm going to be up against the Pro Bowl. I knew I should have rescheduled it. No, but we're still going to do it January 30th and 31st. And people can find out all about this and all about, I guess, everything else at our website, which is kaplancomedy.com. That's Kaplan with a K, APLAN. comedy, comedy.com.
And, your second book, I actually took that webinar with you from the Writer's Store previously, which was creating the journey, the comic writer's journey. I think it's what I'm sorry, I'm butchering
the comic hero's journey. Right.
I'm butchering the title already, Steve. I just heard it and already I'm butchering it. But, I took that webinar with you, previously, and I thought that was a great seminar. I actually sent you an email afterwards and I said, this was, very well done. And I'm, excited to see you actually, are actually expanding that now and, writing this second book.
Yeah, so we got so much good feedback from that webinar, which had started out as a kind of a very small section of my workshop, and then we presented a version of it at one of the expos. I think it was Great American Script Fest, and then the Writer's Store asked me to come up with an idea for a webinar. So we pitched that. And so many people said, there's so much stuff in here that I don't know about, or I kind of knew, but I wasn't really sure. And you kind of codified it for us, that we felt very encouraged to go ahead and jump into another book, which is much like jumping into a lake of fire. If for those of you who are writers, you know what I'm talking about. And writing nonfiction is I think even harder, because when you're writing fiction or narrative or script, you can always say, somebody bursts in the room, a gunshot goes off, and then you can just cut to something else. But in a fiction book, you have to actually keep on giving them more and more and more good information. So it's coming along. As I tell my publisher at Michael WC Productions, it's coming along. It's coming. It'll be there soon.
One of the questions I have that actually came in, I'll ask a little later, actually ties in with that webinar as well, and I'm interested to hear your response, because the email just came in from that through my website. So I wanted to, just as we talk about your book and your upcoming webinar, I wanted to ask you, really quickly, and I asked this too to Scott Dickers, who was just on the podcast. Scott Dickers, for anyone who doesn't know, he actually co-founded The Onion. And by the way, Steve, we brought you up a lot. And he actually likes your book.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Now I'm all at Twitter. Scott Dickers likes my book.
Yeah, he knew that book. He knew your book, and he knew one other book, and he said those are because he actually just came out with a book as well. And I had to ask him, I was like, did you read Steve Kaplan's book, Hidden Tools of Comedy? And he said, oh, absolutely. And he's like, it's one of my favorite books on comedy. So going with that, we were talking, and this is a question I wanted to ask you, Steve, as well, to get your info, is it harder today to write comedy? And one of the things one of the issues I brought up was, with everything the way it is, meaning we sort of this PC culture that has sort of morphed into the I'm offended culture. You know, one of the things that I asked Scott was, do you think it's harder to write comedy now because of how misconstrued things might get, even no matter how innocent or how harsh it may be? It's just sort of the end always seems to come out as I'm offended at this. Now, do you feel, Steve, that it might be harder today to write comedy?
I actually don't. I actually think that this is a great time to write comedy. The problem is the comedy that you're writing, is it going to be well received? Is it going to be if you offend some people, that's okay. But there was. I actually got interviewed by a reporter because of the South Park episode in which they raped and murdered a cartoon version of Donald Trump, and the question there was that over the line? So, I mean, in one sense, it's a great time to do comedy because there is no line anymore. You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. You can make fun of whomever you want. I think the problem is that since the line has all but disappeared, it makes it harder for writers and comedians, because limitations actually help you. They actually force you to be more creative. So. Just because you can make fun of anything, does that make it good comedy? So yes, you can make fun of everything, but it actually makes it a little bit more difficult to hit the target squarely, as it were, to figure out what the comic target is and deliver satire with helpful heaping portions of compassion. One of the rules of thumb, and this is not new to me, is comedy should comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So in that sense, when you're making fun of people, you want to. You want to make sure that you're not making fun of somebody else's pain, but you can certainly make fun of other people who cause pain. So Donald Trump is a public figure, and he's ripe for satire, as is Hillary Clinton, as is Kim Davis, but the comics who just are after shock value and are going to try to come up with some kind of funny take on a tragedy like a school shooting, you have to be very careful, not so much not to offend somebody, but you have to be very careful to know who your target is. Who are you making fun of? What are you making fun of? Are you making fun of people's pain? Or are you making fun of hypocrisy, short-sightedness, the human flaws and foibles that are really the topic and the area that comedy works in. I'm really curious to know, what did Scott Dickers say?
Scott actually said that. Well, basically, he said that he doesn't think it's harder at all. He actually thinks that it's just a matter of taste. And he said, people were getting offended before this whole, ultra I'm offended movement type, and he basically said that, at the box office, if you do make an R-rated comedy, though, from a producer's standpoint, that does take money off the box office, because obviously they want everything to be PG-13, so that way people under the age of 18 can go see it. So basically, you and him pretty much have that parallel opinion about that.
Well, I always knew he agreed with me because he liked. No, I think that it's. Listen, I mean, we live in a world in which, for God's sakes, Donald Trump could be president of the United States. This is both a nightmare for American citizens and a gift from God to comedians. But the question again is, I agree with Scott. It's taste, but it's not so much the taste of the audience as much as it is the taste of the comics. And the person who I always point to as really having a brilliant take on how to take the day's tragedies and calamities and find where the comedy is was in The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, who would be able to mix both outrage and indignation with silliness and a sharp satirical eye and pen. I kind of miss. I really miss him. I have to admit that I haven't been watching a lot of Trevor Noah. I on purpose. I want to give that a couple of weeks to shake out and then tune in like after a month or so and see what's going on. But I'm going through Stewart withdrawal because no one was smarter, more to the point, more humanistic than Jon Stewart's and the entire show's take on the daily activities of America and the human race. And they always found their comedy in terms of character. And what I thought was brilliant about The Daily Show, which in watching the trailers and the clips that I've seen, I know that they're continuing that with Trevor Noah. What was brilliant was the fact that rather than simply making fun of other people, which is kind of a mug's game, it's really too easy to do. They would create these idiotic correspondents and therefore make fun of themselves. They would make fun of themselves, and Jon Stewart as the befuddled, somewhat perturbed, somewhat confused anchor made fun of himself more than anyone else. Which is why I guess when he went on shows like Crossfire, and he wasn't playing that befuddled character, and he really took those pundits to task, they were so shocked because there was a really sharp, discerning intelligence behind the comedy there. And like I said, I'm going through a little bit of Stewart withdrawal. I am shooting up the John Oliver methadone. But once a week I get to kind of revisit the riffs that I loved from The Daily Show at length in Jon Stewart's show at night. But it's only once a week, so I do miss it.
Yeah, I also have not been watching the new Daily Show. I just don't find Trevor Noah funny. I mean, honestly, I think at one point they had a very good, a very great cast. They had Jon Stewart leading it, and they had all sorts of great, like you said, the faux news anchors, who were playing these characters. And, one by one, they were all doing their own thing. John Oliver left. And then so now I think when Jon Stewart left, they had almost, nobody from that great cast left. I just don't like Trevor Noah. I just don't like his delivery or anything else.
You know what? I again, and I have to say it's, having not sat down and watched an entire show, I'm the last person to comment. But the thing that struck me, I'm driving home and I'm listening to a review of The Daily Show on NPR, and the thing that struck me is how different he sounds from us, how foreign he sounds. And I thought, well, why is it bothering me? And I thought, well, because Jon Stewart sounds like one of us, and even John Oliver sounds like, in his East London accent, sounded like one of us. and Trevor Noah. Again, I'm gonna check in a month, and I hope he delights me and wows me. But it's just strange listening to that, and that's probably my own xenophobia. But it sounds a little foreign to me, and somehow I'm missing that connection. That's terrible to say. Listen, just cut out that part of the podcast because I'm going to offend somebody. But that was kind of my reaction. I kind of miss John, and maybe it's just like the music was never as good as it was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Just pick the decade that you were a kid in, and maybe that's my problem. Is that it's never going to be. It's never going to be the National Lampoon with Sean Kenny, and Henry Beard. It's never going to be the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and you move on and you find new things. But luckily, we still have Amy Schumer, and we still have John Oliver. And is Key and Peele going to have one more season, or are they done?
They're done.
Oh, okay. Now I'm depressed again. Now I'm depressed again because there's no more Key and Peele, which I loved. I would just binge watch them, DVR all their stuff and then binge watch them because they were the two of them were brilliant. And whenever they kind of showed up on other shows, I went, oh my God, that's Key and Peele, because they were in Fargo last year, and oh my God, they're Key and Peele. Oh my God, Billy Bob Thornton killed Key and Peele. So that's my own sense of loss, of bereavement.
Well, you brought up Amy Schumer, which I'm glad about, because that's actually one of my questions for you is, did you actually get a chance to see Trainwreck in theaters yet?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I didn't think that it was revolutionary, but I loved it. I thought she was great. Bill Hader was great. It made me laugh a lot. My favorite part, of course, was LeBron. Because he was just the perfect rom-com best friend. And here's what I love about the whole Amy Schumer, Kristen Wiig, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler thing is that it puts to bed the lie that women aren't funny. And the prejudice against that has been ongoing for years, and they're funny. Funny people are funny, and after Kristen Wiig did Bridesmaids, everybody thought, well, now there's going to be all this stuff with women, and it didn't quite happen as soon as people thought, but what I think is great is that now you can have bad comedy films with women. Why should only male comics make bad films? Why should it just be Adam Sandler? So I actually think it's a good thing that you had Hot Pursuit with Reese Witherspoon, and I forget who else was in it. But that kind of didn't work. But it's a good thing that now we're able to have women headline comedies and have them be as good as Bridesmaid or Trainwreck or as kind of miss the boat as Hot Pursuit. I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah, and also you mentioned Hot Pursuits. I actually saw that as well, and I concur with you. I think that definitely missed the mark. There's a few moments I'll admit that I chuckled at, and they were mostly Reese Witherspoon's lines. I just think that as a whole, the movie, particularly Sofia Vergara, that's it.
Right.
I just think that her character was so over the top. That whole act became very annoying very quickly, and I don't think that was supposed to be the joke of it.
I think you hit a good point. I mean, Reese Witherspoon's a great actress. Sofia Vergara is a great actress. She does very well on Modern Family, but they're not comedians. And I think that one of the things that movie lacked was a comedian's point of view, a kind of a comedian's presence. So if you think about The Heat with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy, Sandra Bullock can do comedy, but she's not a comedian. And so Sandra Bullock is well aided by Melissa McCarthy's performance there, and it kind of helps bring her up to a really good level. I think the same thing is true of the other guys with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, where Mark Wahlberg's a great actor. He's done a bunch of comedy, but I think Will Ferrell's a comic, and I think the two of them together did a great job, and that's really one of my favorite comedies of the last couple of years. I think it's not as recognized as it should be for brilliant comedy. But Trainwreck, funny. Did it reinvent the form? No, but I think it made it possible for other comedians to make their own movies.
I would be verbose if I didn't mention also, as we're talking about rom-coms, we mentioned Trainwreck, we mentioned the Sofia Vergara Reese Witherspoon movie. What was that called again?
Hot Pursuit.
I forgot it that quickly. Now, I know this wasn't intentionally a comedy, but did you happen to see 50 Shades of Grey?
Oh no, but I understand that it was terrible. I mean, it was, but it also made $1 billion. So they're making sequels to it, right?
Yes.
50 Shades of Off Gray, 112 Shades of Puce, 14 Shades of Lime Gray. I'm gathering you saw it.
I actually saw it with a group of friends. They actually, the one girl had read the books, and she actually was like, "Well, would you guys want to go see this?" And I said no, and everybody else said yes. So I begrudgingly went to go see 50 Shades of Grey. It was almost like they were using BDSM on me to watch a movie about BDSM.
So. I mean, have you read like a chapter of the book?
No, I haven't.
It's the worst writing in the world. It's the worst writing in the world. I remember when I was a kid, and I would steal into my parents' bedroom, and I would look under the sock drawer where my dad kept his 1950s pornography, these books with the racy cover, and I would read those. And just for educational purposes, I might add. But the writing in those were better than 50 Shades of Grey. So it's kind of a phenomenon. But people ask, how can you get ahead as a writer? And having read 50 Shades of Grey, my answer is now, who the hell knows? It's like you can't predict it anymore, unfortunately, or fortunately. It means that just go ahead and write something. You never know. Although I guess if you put a lot of bondage and sex in it, that would help. But it's a mystery to me. So was it a good movie?
No, I didn't enjoy it at all.
So should we encourage people to go see it?
Absolutely not. Okay. The lead Christian Grey, the character Christian Grey, he basically is stalking this girl, played by Dakota Johnson. And I'm like, is there a point to this that I'm going to say? There's literally no plot to the movie. It's literally, I'll just give you the quick 20-second synopsis.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, here's what I know about the movie. She goes to interview him. He's like this ultra rich guy, and then somehow he chains her up. And my question is she does she allow herself to be chained up just because he's rich and hot, or what's going on there?
Well, at first she has to go to the interview because her friend was supposed to go, but she's sick, so she goes in her place. And then she interviews Christian Grey. She falls for him because he's this debonair, like he's drop dead gorgeous. He's a billionaire. He's like 28, 27 years old. Well, she ends up he approaches her about, getting in a relationship, and he makes her sign a contract about it. A literal contract, Steve. Like he throws papers in front of her, and she has
to sign it in order to go on a date with him.
To begin this relationship. And it's like a sub and a dom thing. And so basically she willingly does this, and then eventually he becomes like possessive. And the movie just sort of ends.
Well, because there's going to be a sequel. But doesn't this sound like it should be a comedy? I mean, at the point in which he gives her the contract, shouldn't she have her Uncle Bernie come in and this is my Uncle Bernie. He's going to look over this contract for me. So where it says you get to chain her up, now is that going to be every day? What's the compensation? Is there going to be breaks? So in a way, the minute that they get into the B&D, the S&M. To me, it becomes a comedy. That's the only way you can. I mean, because somebody's got to go. Wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. So
it reminds me of the Love Contract from Chappelle's Show. And I was just after the movie ended, I asked the girl, I was like, was that the way the book was? And she said, yeah, it's actually pretty accurate. And then she told me the sequels, and I said, you will have to pay me to go see the sequels because I just there literally is no plot. So
did the fan of the book enjoy the movie?
I think she did on some level. I don't know.
Wow.
I know a lot of people did go see the movie though. And as a side note, I once read that a lot of those romance novels are big now again because nobody can be seen reading them. Why? Because you're on your Kindle or your Nook or you're on your phone and nobody knows what you're reading. But if I have the actual physical book, everyone can see the cover.
Right.
So that's why I heard that's why there's romance novels.
Well, I'm not sure that romance novels ever went out of favor. They've always been a very popular genre. Michael Haig, my friend, makes a tiny living talking to various chapters of the Romance Writers of America all across the country. So they're around. They're still there. So I don't think they came back, but maybe there's been a resurgence. And before the romance novels were all just bodice rippers, but there were euphemisms and you suggested things. But I guess now with 50 Shades of Grey, there's no longer suggestion. They're just going to take bodily parts and put chains on them and whip other bodily parts. Gee, now I'm glad I didn't go see it, but I never would have seen it. It's not my cup of gray, as it were.
A writer I had on the podcast, he actually wrote the book How to Survive a Sharknado. He actually wrote a book called The 50 Shades of Earl Grey Tea.
And how was that?
I didn't read that book. I did read his book, though, How to Survive a Sharknado.
Now, was that basically a tie-in to Sharknado, or is that where Sharknado came from?
That's a tie-in with Sharknado.
Now, Sharknado. Now, those are some bad movies.
Yes. But I
once
think
you've seen a shark flying in a hurricane or a tornado biting the head off of somebody, you've seen them all. I mean, but I guess that's just like 10 seconds out of an hour and 45-minute movie. So I mean, those are some pretty. I mean, when a movie's so bad that you can't even enjoy it to laugh at it, I thought they were pretty bad. But listen, they're free. You just turn on the TV and they're just right in front of you, free.
The first one I think was the best because I think it knew exactly. I think the actors were. It's always funnier when the actors aren't in on the joke. Or anybody for that matter, like the director or maybe even the writer and the producers. The sequels, everybody is so in on the joke now that they know exactly what they're going for. It's just that it's like the Room.
You would think that would be a good thing because they're in on the joke. But I think what happens is that they're trying to be funny, whereas in like Scary Movie 1, in Sharknado 1, they're just trying to do it as well as they can, and they don't really know how well this is going to come off, so they might as well just kind of do it straight and let the audience see what was comic. But now they're all trying to be silly, and that doesn't make it better.
I concur. I think, once you're in on the joke, it kind of takes away that charm. Like the movie The Room, that movie is just comedic gold. Every scene is just comedic gold. Have you seen The Room, Steve?
Is that the one that just opened up at Toronto?
No, The Room is the one with Tommy Wiseau. It's called like one of the worst bad movies. It's called one of the worst movies ever.
Oh, there's actually another movie called The Room that got, I think, won the audience award at Toronto International Film Festival, and it's I know the one you're talking about with that, the worst movie ever made, but this other movie written by an Irish writer, and it's supposed to be very comic, but in a horrific way. The story about, remember that German guy who kept his daughter and kept these women locked in a dungeon and had children with them? Mm-hmm. Well, this movie it takes the point of view of one of these women with her own child, who she got from this guy who had abducted her and raped her, and how they're trying to survive or maybe even escape from the situation. So, but that's not the movie you're talking about.
Yeah, I actually just looked it up. That one is called simply Room.
Oh, okay. Room. So there's no the there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure that one of the producers or somebody probably said, wait a minute, if we call it The Room, there's already a The Room, and that has monster SEO because that's Tommy Wiseau and all those guys go around and he just exhibits it basically. He takes it like the old school way and takes that movie around from theater to theater, and it's sold out everywhere.
Is it sold out because it's so bad?
Other part of it is because Tommy's there with it, and the third part of it is because they interact with the movie now. So basically, when Tommy says something
like the horror, like Rocky Horror,
exactly.
Wow. Well, I mean, in a world in which Donald Trump could be president, I guess anything can happen.
Well, if you haven't seen The Room, Steve, or anyone listening, I highly recommend you check it out. But just take my advice and do it in a group of people. Like, gather some friends, put in the DVD or Blu-ray, and just sort of take it all in together. And
are drugs required?
No drugs are required whatsoever.
Oh.
It is something that, I mean, drugs may ease it, but because if you actually – the first time I ever saw The Room, I simply was befuddled. I didn't even – I started to catch a little bit of the humor, but I was more like, what in the hell is going on here? And it's not like a David Lynchian movie either, where it requires a lot of thought and a lot of interpretation. It's simply just so poorly done from top to bottom. And there's also a book about it called The Disaster Artist that it is phenomenal.
That sounds interesting.
and it's the co-star Greg Sestero wrote it about his experiences making that movie, because the movie, if you never knew this going in, you would say, okay, that movie probably cost $100,000 tops. It has no stars in it. It's all very minimal locations, and then you realize afterwards that the movie cost $7 million to make.
What?
Yes. You would be blown away, because the first thing I said is, what did they spend $7 million on, and who would invest in this movie? And you find out afterwards that the star of it, Tommy Wiseau, is a multi-millionaire, and he just invested all his own money into it.
Well, thank God for that, because otherwise somebody's at $7 million. I mean, but if something looks terrible and you didn't hire any good actors or expensive actors, what was it? Just like catering costs? What did they spend $7 million on?
Well, here's one of the funny things that was spent $7 million on. Tommy Wiseau, the guy who wrote, directed, produced it, and starred in it.
Now I have to watch this tonight. That's as soon as I'm getting off this podcast, I'm simply going to download it and watch it. And so I'll Tommy, you'll get I don't know, about $9 back on your investment, because now I'm fascinated. But go ahead, tell me what they spent money on.
Well, the first thing that Tommy spent money on was his own private bathroom.
I was going to say that he had jets. Okay, what else? Private bathroom. Well, that makes sense, because why would you want to share a bathroom with somebody? Although, have you ever heard of a trailer?
Well, and he also not only did he have catering, but he had his own private catering, because he thought that people were going to poison him. It's also everything. He had sets that were just, and all the equipment that they used in the entire film, from the cameras to the lights, he bought that outright. He went into.
He didn't rent them?
Nope. He bought everything all in cash.
Well, there's some cameraman salesman who made out like a bandit. I mean, they must have seen this guy coming. And now I feel bad. Now I feel bad for him. Now I'm glad I might download it twice, because now I feel bad that he was obviously ripped off and taken advantage of. Somebody saw a neophyte, an amateur, and they're going to soak him. And I don't wish that on anybody.
Well,
so Tommy, good luck to you in your next endeavor. I guess doing The Room 2.
Well, he is. He still is a multimillionaire. He actually owns a lot of property in downtown San Francisco.
Well, now I don't feel bad for Paul.
See, I'm taking you through the emotional gamut of like.
Oh my God! It's the ups and the downs. It's like a roller coaster here.
And Tommy also. He had to rent out sound stages. He also paid the cast to be on set every single day, even though they weren't going to be shooting. He would reshoot scenes.
Now I feel bad. Why did this guy not hire me as a script consultant? I could have made a fortune. Now, Tommy, I could give you a good deal. I have a daily rate that you could afford. It's in 5 figures. I'm sure it would be worth it to you.
Yeah. Well,
now I'm pissed. Tommy, why didn't you ask me to work on your script? Who did he write the script himself?
Yes, he did.
Well, because you don't want to have to waste money on a writer. Oh, brother.
And the book covers all that of what he, the whole gamut of him writing the script. Because Greg lived with him while he was writing the script, and he said Tommy was growing.
Not in a romantic way, I hope.
No, it was in a. they were friends, and then Tommy, lived. Tommy had apartment buildings that he owned, and he said, "Hey, Greg, you want to come move in with me?" And
now it sounds romantic. Now it sounds like the 50 Shades of Tommy.
Well, he wrote the part for Greg because he thought Greg had betrayed him because Greg got into the Screen Actors Guild before he did, and he saw, Greg was getting some success, and Tommy, for all those years that he was, a businessman, he tried to act on the side, and he just couldn't. Once you see The Room, you'll understand why he couldn't never have been a working actor, and it just all the other costs, like renting a billboard for like 5 or 6 years every month, and all it had on it was a hotline that you could call Tommy at, and people had no idea what the movie was. If you see the billboard picture they used, it looks like a horror film.
And what's the name of the book?
It's called The Disaster Artist by Greg Sestero.
I'm downloading that into my Kindle right now.
I mean, it is so. It ended up with.
So basically, in this podcast, you've basically promoted the worst movies ever.
Yeah, we always devote a good amount of time on my podcast to promoting bad movies.
Oh wow!
And so what happened was. The movie rights were just bought for The Disaster Artist by what is their names? The guy from oh man, I can't believe I'm going to forget this. What is that guy's name?
Sounds like.
I can't even. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. I can see his face. I'm gonna have to. What is his name? He's always in movies with Seth Rogen.
Jay Baruchel?
No, James Franco. That's
James
it.
Franco. Okay.
So James Franco ended up buying the movie rights, and so now the movie is going to be coming out. So it's sort of like Ed Wood, how Ed Wood was about making Plan 9, right. And that's what this new movie is going to be about. And honestly, I cannot wait to see that.
That sounds – I mean, James Franco, that sounds great. Good.
Yeah.
James Franco is the alpha and omega of filmmakers, making the best and the worst movies ever. So that's right in his wheelhouse.
So he is going to end up. I heard David Franco is going to play Greg, and I heard James is going to play Tommy, which would be awesome. Which would be absolutely phenomenal if they could pull it off right. And hopefully they get Nicolas Cage in there somewhere. I'm not sure.
He has to be. Has to be.
So because we're talking about all these bad movies, but one thing though that we have to talk about. We talked about you as a script consultant. I wanted to ask about your upcoming webinar. So I was like,
okay. I hate though. It sounds like let's talk about the worst movies ever, and let's talk about your webinar.
I was trying to get us to something good. So I was like,
okay,
enough about the bad movies, and I want to talk about your webinar. And I wanted to ask Steve, it's how to put the comedy in dramedy. So what are some of the things that you're going to cover on this upcoming webinar?
Well, one of the things that we're going to cover is the essential characters of comedy. Mm-hmm. That you usually find in a dramedy. How to balance the comedy and the drama. The structure, the usual structure of a hour dramedy, and also where the majority of the seminar is going to be kind of deconstructing both Up in the Air and Fargo for how they switch back and forth between comedy and drama. I mean, one of the things that we talk about is the fact that and Steve Soderbergh does this a lot in his movies, is one of the things that filmmakers do in dramedies, in successful dramedies, is that when they cast characters, and they did, I think Steve Soderbergh did this in The Informant. That's the movie with Matt Damon.
Yeah, I actually saw that one.
And if you look at The Informant, which is it's really not a dramedy, it's more of a comedy. But if you look at The Informant, which is kind of a serious or a movie about a serious thing, and it's not an out and out laugh rich comedy. One of the things that he did was everybody who he cast, with the exception maybe of Matt Damon, was a comic. Was a stand-up comic or a sketch comic. And so one of the things that adds comedy to the dramatic element, for instance, in the Breaking Bad spin-off, Better Call Saul, is that these are parts that are usually played by dramatic actors, but you're having comic actors play them. And because you have comic actors play them, the actors bring a comic point of view. So that's one of the things that you can see from successful dramedies. Also, the types of characters that you have in a dramedy are different than, say, in ER or in a straight drama. The other thing is the difference, the interspersing of the comedic scenes and the dramatic scenes. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at a Fargo, we'll take a look at an Up in the Air, we'll take a look at a Better Call Saul, and we'll break it down and analyze exactly what's happening there and why it's happening and what the effect is.
So, we mentioned Trainwreck before, and we mentioned LeBron, being in Trainwreck. So, do you think that maybe he was casted in Trainwreck, not only for quote unquote stunt casting, but do you think maybe because in that role, if you have like a well-known sports player, maybe he, is going to be not only attract a different audience, but also maybe bring something different to the table? Do you think maybe that's why he was casted in that part?
Well, I'm not sure if he was the first choice or if he was the fifth choice, but whoever they cast, the joke there is that his dialogue is the kind of dialogue that Rosie O'Donnell would have in a 1990s rom-com, where you better not break his heart, and all his dialogue was the dialogue that you would associate with usually the girl's best friend in a rom-com. And what was great about LeBron was he did it as straight as he could, but with this weird sense that he was kind of channeling the girl's best friend part, which made it hysterical. My wife was watching it and she was amused, but she didn't realize who was doing it. She didn't really know who LeBron James was, and so I'm doubled over in laughter, and my wife is amused, but maybe not doubled over. So part of the joke with LeBron was simply the fact that they gave him the dialogue that usually the girl's best friend would get. When she talks to the guy, you better not break her heart. He's been through a lot. She's been through a lot, and giving that to LeBron was brilliant. And also, my favorite scene in the movie when LeBron and Bill Hader are playing basketball, and LeBron cannot not play the best basketball he can play, which is basically just crushing Bill Hader, who has no chance of scoring on LeBron James. I thought that was hysterical too. And again, it's that dichotomy of what you expect to have happen and what's actually happening.
It's also funny. I know to bring up sports stars, but a few years ago, That's My Boy came out with Adam Sandler, and I think I'm in the minority here that actually liked the movie. And
I can't say that I've seen it.
So, they have Rex Ryan,
or maybe I won't admit that I've seen it.
That's what I thought you were hinting at, Steve. So they had Rex Ryan as sort of Adam Sandler's bookie manager, whatever he was, and he had a hot tip and about this race, and this fat guy was going to win it. But one of the things was Rex Ryan, as this character, had a crush on Tom Brady, and that was kind of, it's funny dichotomy because obviously at that point Rex Ryan was the head coach of the New York Jets,
right? And obviously Tom Brady is a cheat, but unless you get this podcast in Boston, in which case he's a great guy.
See, Steve, you know how to cover all the bases.
The other thing I want to say about the webinar on the 4th is you'll learn the essential comic elements in dramedy. You'll learn the three mistakes that most dramedies make, the 4 secrets of successful dramedies, and you'll learn the dramedy paradigm, the combination of theme, thought, and tone. Which is funny because you asked me a question that I should have anticipated you were going to ask. So tell me about the dramedy webinar, and it's actually something that I hadn't really thought about.
No, I know you. I know you have a lot of info in that brain, Steve, to pull from, and that's why.
Because I was still thinking about The Room and The Disaster Artist, and I have to see this movie now. So I was very distracted.
See, that's what I do, Steve. I distract you with some of the worst movies ever, and some of the
distract. And now I have to see. Do I really have to see the Adam Sandler That's My Boy?
No, you don't.
Because it sounds. Because I got to tell you, I loved him in Funny People, up to a point, and I thought that like a breakup where two people go their own way, but they still think nice thoughts about each other. That's me and Adam Sandler. I'm going to keep him, my thoughts of him, my memory of him in Funny People, and that's it. That's what it's going to be for me and Adam. We're going to go our separate ways. I'm not going to think about what was the movie he made with Kevin James and all those people?
Well, there was a few of those. There was The Zookeeper.
No.
Grown Ups.
The Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2. I'm not going to even think about that. I'm just going to think about, man, he was really good in Funny People. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I hate to admit this, Steve, but I've actually seen both Grown Ups.
Okay. Now you got to tell me, which is better, Grown Ups 1 or Grown Ups 2, or neither?
I'm going to say Grown Ups 1.
Because the sequels are never as good as the originals. I kind of knew that.
Well, I got drugged to see Grown Ups 2, and when I saw the trailer that had the digital, CGI deer pissing in Adam Sandler's face, I was like, "That's you're in trouble when you have a CGI deer pissing in your face."
And I think we have to end the podcast on that note.
What a way to end the podcast.
Because I definitely have to see The Room. I have to read The Disaster Artist, but I do not have to see Grown Ups or Grown Ups 2.
No, don't need to see that or That's My Boy or anything, any of those movies.
Exactly.
So, Steve, where can people find you at online?
They can find me. Any number of places. They can serve me papers here in Los Angeles, but online they can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @SKComedy. On Facebook, I'm Steve Kaplan's Comedy Intensive, and on the web, I'm kaplancomedy.com, KAPLANCOMEDY.com.
And as always, everyone, I will link to those in the show notes. And everyone, you can find me at davebullis.com, and Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. Steve, I have to have you back on again sometime soon. You're always a great guest, and hopefully it won't be another year before I have you back on.
I'm always happy. What I need to do, though, is I need to brush up on my bad movies, and then we'll have a lot more to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. I am like an encyclopedia of bad movies, Steve. So if anytime you want a recommendation, you come to me, and I'll give you some real doozies.
Okay, I'm gonna go look at watch a lot of movies in January, because that's when all the bad movies are brought out, and then we can talk.
Sounds like a plan, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Anytime, Steve. And again, everyone, check out Steve's upcoming webinar, How Do You Put the Comedy in Dramedy? It's Wednesday, November the 4th via the Writers Store. There's a link in the show notes. And I always recommend anything Steve does. His book is great.
And don't forget our live seminar in Los Angeles, January 30th and 31st. And put a link up there as well.
Will do, Steve. And again, Steve, thanks a lot for coming on, and I wish you the best with everything.
Thanks, Dave.
Anytime,
Always
buddy.
A pleasure.
Take care, buddy.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.